The girl heard the guard speaking Chinese, then warned the millionaire not to get in the car. The rain had begun before sunrise, washing the streets of Manhattan in a silver haze that blurred the lights of expensive skyscrapers into shimmering reflections. People hurried beneath umbrellas, never noticing the young girl sitting quietly beneath the awning of a closed flower shop. She couldn't have been more than 15 years old. Her faded grey hoodie hung loosely over her shoulders, and the backpack beside her looked almost empty. To everyone passing by, she was invisible, just another homeless teenager trying to survive another cold morning in the city. But what no one knew was that the girl possessed something more valuable than money. She understood 5 languages. Her mother had been a translator before she died, teaching her daughter from childhood that every language unlocked a different world. Even after tragedy forced the girl onto the streets, she never forgot those lessons. She listened more than she spoke, and because people rarely noticed her, she often heard conversations they never intended anyone else to understand. That morning would change everything. Across the street stood the towering headquarters of Kingston Global Holdings, one of the largest technology companies in America. Luxury cars lined the entrance while security guards scanned every visitor. Employees rushed through the revolving doors carrying coffee and laptops, preparing for another busy day. The company's owner, 70-year-old billionaire Richard Kingston, was expected to arrive within minutes. Richard Kingston was known as a genius in business and a ruthless negotiator. Newspapers called him the Steel Billionaire because he never smiled during interviews and never seemed to trust anyone. Yet those who worked closely with him whispered a different story. Quietly, without cameras, he donated millions to children's hospitals and scholarships. He believed actions mattered more than publicity. Every morning followed the same routine. A black armored limousine arrived at exactly 8:30. 4 armed guards surrounded the vehicle. Richard exited the building only after his chief of security confirmed the area was safe. It had happened that way for years. Until today. The girl watched as 2 unfamiliar security guards stepped away from the entrance and stood near the limousine. Their uniforms looked authentic, but something about them seemed different. She couldn't immediately explain why. Then one of the men glanced around to make sure nobody was paying attention. He spoke quietly, in Mandarin. The girl's eyes widened. Most people nearby heard meaningless sounds. She heard every word. The device is already installed beneath the rear passenger seat. The second guard answered calmly. He always sits on the right side. Detonation after 30 seconds. The first man nodded. If anything changes, eliminate the backup target. The girl's heartbeat nearly stopped. She looked toward the limousine. It appeared completely normal. Shiny black paint. Tinted windows. Perfectly polished. Yet hidden beneath the seat. A bomb. She searched the faces of everyone nearby. No one reacted. No one understood. The guards returned to speaking English, laughing casually as another employee walked past. Their performance was flawless. The girl felt panic rising inside her. What should she do? If she ran to the police, it would already be too late. If she shouted "bomb," nobody would believe a homeless teenager. If she confronted the guards, they might kill her before anyone listened. She had seconds to decide. The revolving doors opened. Richard Kingston emerged wearing a charcoal grey overcoat despite the rain. His silver hair was neatly combed, and his expression remained as unreadable as ever. Around him walked 4 trusted bodyguards, along with his executive assistant carrying several folders. Everything looked routine. Everything looked safe. Except it wasn't. The girl stood. Her legs trembled. People immediately frowned. Sit down. Don't bother anyone. Security. Ignoring every voice, she ran across the rain-soaked street. A taxi slammed its brakes. The driver shouted angrily. She kept running. The security team instantly reacted. Stop her. 2 bodyguards intercepted her before she reached the billionaire. She struggled desperately. You can't let him get in the car. Richard paused. One guard tightened his grip. She's just another scammer. The girl shook her head frantically. No. Please listen. Don't get in that limousine. Richard studied her silently. Years of leading billion-dollar negotiations had taught him to read faces. This girl's expression wasn't greedy. It wasn't manipulative. It was terrified. One bodyguard whispered, "Sir, we'll remove her." The billionaire didn't answer immediately. Instead, He asked one simple question. Why? She glanced nervously toward the two unfamiliar guards. She couldn't reveal exactly how she knew. If they realized she understood Mandarin, she might become their next target. Instead, she said quietly, "Because if you get inside, you'll die." A nervous laugh spread among nearby employees. Someone recorded the scene with a smartphone. Another person muttered, "She's crazy." The chief of security stepped forward. "Sir, we are behind schedule." Richard continued watching the girl. "What is your name?" "Lena." "How do you know something will happen?" She hesitated. I heard something." "What did you hear?" "I can't explain here." The chief of security lost patience. "This is ridiculous." He signaled the guards. "Move her." As they began pulling her away, she screamed with every ounce of strength she had. "The car is trapped." Silence. Every head turned toward the limousine. The unfamiliar guards remained perfectly calm. Too calm. Richard noticed. His instincts suddenly sharpened. He raised one hand. "Nobody touches the vehicle." The order stunned everyone. The chief of security blinked. "Sir." "That's an order." Within seconds, bomb technicians from a nearby emergency response unit were requested. The waiting felt endless. Rain continued falling. Nobody spoke. The two unfamiliar guards exchanged a glance so brief that almost no one noticed. Except Lena. She saw fear. Tiny. Almost invisible. But unmistakable. 10 minutes later, bomb technicians carefully inspected the limousine. The chief technician crawled beneath the vehicle. Another opened specialized equipment. Minutes passed. Then, the technician froze. He slowly backed away. His face had turned pale. "There is definitely something here." Every person present stopped breathing. After another careful inspection, the technician stood. His voice shook. "Everyone back away immediately." The street erupted into chaos. Police rushed forward. Employees fled. Sirens echoed between skyscrapers. Richard Kingston never took his eyes off Lena. Because without her, he would already be dead. But across the street, hidden behind a newspaper stand, a man wearing dark sunglasses lowered his phone after sending a single encrypted message. Mission failed. Proceed to phase 2. Lena didn't see him. Richard didn't see him. But someone far more dangerous than the fake guards had just learned that an unknown girl had ruined a carefully planned assassination. And from that moment on, she became the next target. The wail of police sirens echoed through the financial district as officers sealed off the entire block. Yellow tape stretched across the sidewalks. Reporters began arriving within minutes, and dozens of curious onlookers gathered behind the barricades. News helicopters circled overhead, broadcasting live footage of what had nearly become one of the biggest assassinations in American history. Lena stood shivering beneath the rain, her soaked hoodie clinging to her shoulders. She wasn't thinking about the cameras or the crowd. Her eyes searched frantically for the two fake security guards. They were gone. They disappeared. She whispered. Richard Kingston looked in the same direction. "Who?" "The two guards standing beside your limousine." His chief of security frowned. "Impossible. Every guard is accounted for." "No," Lena insisted. "Those weren't your real guards." At that moment, one of the bomb technicians hurried toward Richard, carrying a sealed evidence bag. "Sir, the explosive device was military grade. Whoever planted it knew exactly where you sit. It would have detonated 30 seconds after the car began moving." The words hit everyone like a hammer. This wasn't random. Someone had studied Richard's routine for months. The police commissioner approached. "Mr. Kingston, we'd like you to come with us. This has become a federal investigation." Richard nodded, then looked back at Lena. "And the girl?" "She'll need to answer a few questions." Lena's heart sank. She knew what would happen. They would ask how she knew about the bomb. If she admitted she understood Mandarin, whoever organized the attack would realize she had overheard everything. She couldn't let that happen. An hour later, Lena sat inside a quiet interview room at police headquarters. A paper cup of hot chocolate rested untouched in front of her. Across the table sat Detective Sarah Mitchell, a veteran investigator known for solving impossible cases. Sarah smiled gently. Lena, you saved a man's life today. Lena remained silent. We are not here to arrest you. Still no answer. Sarah opened a notebook. Can you tell me how you knew there was a bomb? Lena looked at the floor. I just had a bad feeling. Sarah sighed. You understand that's difficult to believe. I know. You shouted that the car was trapped before anyone found the explosive. I know. So tell me the truth. Lena wanted to. She really did. But every instinct screamed that the walls had ears. Someone powerful had planned today's attack. Someone who might already have people inside the police department. She slowly shook her head. I'm sorry. Meanwhile, 20 miles away, inside an abandoned warehouse near the docks, a dozen computer monitors displayed live news coverage of the failed assassination. A tall man in a black suit stood with his back to the screens. Nobody knew his real name. His organization called him the director. One of his men entered nervously. Sir. Without turning around, the director asked, Who failed me? The team at Kingston Tower. Silence. Then, a gunshot. The man collapsed before finishing his sentence. The director calmly placed the pistol on the table. I do not tolerate failure. He finally faced the room. Every remaining operative lowered their eyes. There was an unexpected witness. A photo of Lena appeared on the largest monitor, rain-soaked, terrified, standing beside Richard Kingston. Find her. One operative asked carefully, alive? The director smiled. For now. Back at police headquarters, Richard Kingston insisted on speaking with Lena before leaving. The detectives reluctantly agreed. He entered the room alone. No lawyers. No assistants. Just the billionaire and the homeless girl who would save him. He sat across from her. For someone so young, he said quietly, you carry fear in your eyes that most adults never experience. Lena looked away. I've seen bad people. I believe you. Several seconds passed. Finally, Richard asked, Do you have family? She hesitated. No. Where do you live? She gave a faint smile. Wherever it doesn't rain. Richard felt something tighten in his chest. For decades he had negotiated billion-dollar mergers without emotion. Yet this child, who had nothing, had risked everything for a stranger. Why did you save me? Lena answered without hesitation. Because it was the right thing to do. Richard leaned back silently. Most people wanted something from him. Money, influence, power. She wanted nothing. That made her the rarest person he'd ever met. As evening approached, Detective Sarah entered the room holding a file. We've identified every member of Mr. Kingston's security team. She paused. Except two. Richard looked up. The girl was right. Sarah nodded. Their identification cards were perfect forgeries. Lena closed her eyes. She had known it. Sarah continued. They vanished before officers secured the scene. We've searched traffic cameras. And they disappeared. Richard frowned. People don't simply disappear. Sarah slid several photographs across the table. They switched vehicles 3 times in under 6 minutes. Richard examined the images. Professional. Disciplined. Military precision. Whoever was behind this operation possessed enormous resources. Late that night, police finally released Lena. Richard refused to let her leave alone. My driver will take you somewhere safe. She immediately shook her head. No. Why not? They'll follow your car. Richard looked surprised. You think they'll come after you? They already are. Before he could respond, a black motorcycle slowly rolled past the building. The rider wore a mirrored helmet. He didn't stop, didn't look. Yet Lena instinctively stepped backward. She had seen him before, near the flower shop that morning. Watching, waiting. The motorcycle disappeared into traffic. Richard's instincts flared. He turned to his security chief. Did you notice that rider? Just another biker. No. Richard's voice hardened. He was watching us. Across the street. Inside a parked delivery van. The biker removed his helmet. He pressed a button on a secure radio. The witness has been released. A cold voice answered through static. Do not engage. Understood. Maintain surveillance. The biker watched as Richard's convoy prepared to leave. Then his eyes settled on Lena. He smiled. She has no idea what's coming. Unaware she was being watched from multiple directions, Lena quietly walked away from the police station into the crowded streets. She believed she was finally safe. She couldn't have been more wrong, because hidden inside her worn backpack, without her knowledge, someone had slipped a tiny GPS tracking device, and every step she took now led her enemies directly to her. The city had grown quieter after midnight, but New York never truly slept. Neon lights reflected off rain-soaked pavement, taxis rushed through intersections, and distant sirens echoed between the skyscrapers. Lena pulled the hood of her sweatshirt tighter as she walked through the cold streets, unaware that every step she took was being tracked. She had only one goal: find a safe place before sunrise. For years, survival had depended on never staying in the same place for long. She knew which subway stations stayed warm at night, which churches served breakfast in the morning, and which alleys to avoid after dark. But tonight felt different. Someone was watching. She couldn't explain it, but the feeling wouldn't leave. She stopped outside a small convenience store and looked behind her. Nothing. Just a man walking his dog. A taxi waiting at a red light. A delivery truck unloading boxes. She exhaled slowly. You're imagining things, she whispered to herself. Then she continued walking. Across the street, inside that same delivery truck, a tiny green light blinked on a computer screen. One of the director's operatives smiled. Target is moving east. Another typed rapidly on a laptop. GPS signal confirmed. The first operative frowned. She still hasn't found the tracker. She won't. Good. They started the engine and quietly followed from a distance. At Kingston Manor, nearly 20 miles away, Richard Kingston stood alone in his enormous study. The mansion was silent except for the crackling fireplace. He held a glass of water in one hand while staring out the window into the darkness. He should have been dead. If not for one frightened teenage girl, his family would already be planning his funeral. A knock interrupted his thoughts. Come in. His longtime security chief, Daniel Brooks, entered carrying several files. We've increased security around the estate. Richard nodded. And the investigation? Daniel looked uneasy. Not good. What do you mean? The bomb used technology we've only seen in military operations. Richard turned. So this wasn't hired criminals? No. Daniel placed photographs on the desk. Someone with extensive funding planned this. Richard studied the pictures silently. Then another thought crossed his mind. What about the girl? Daniel hesitated. Our officers lost sight of her after she left police headquarters. Richard's expression hardened. You lost her. She refused protection. She's a child. I know. Richard slammed his hand against the desk. If they fail to kill me today, they'll go after the only witness. Daniel lowered his head. Richard grabbed his coat. We are finding her. Meanwhile, Lena finally reached an old abandoned train station where she sometimes slept. The roof leaked, but at least it offered shelter from the wind. She spread a thin blanket across a wooden bench and sat down. For the first time all day, she cried. Not because she was afraid, because she remembered her mother. If you ever understand something dangerous, her mother used to say, don't ignore it. Speaking up may save someone's life. Lena wiped away her tears. I listened, Mom. She closed her eyes. I'm just scared now. A sudden sound echoed through the station. Footsteps. Slow. Heavy. She froze. Hello. No answer. The footsteps stopped. Then started again. Closer. Lena quietly reached into her backpack for the small flashlight she carried. Instead, her fingers touched something unfamiliar. A tiny plastic object. She pulled it out. It blinked. Green. What is this? She turned it over. No buttons. No markings. Just a flashing light. Realization hit her instantly. They're tracking me. Without thinking, She hurled the device across the station. It landed beneath a passing freight train just as it began moving. The tracker disappeared into the darkness. Inside the delivery truck, one operative stared at his monitor. The signal suddenly accelerated. What? His partner looked over. The tracker is moving at 90 kilometers per hour. That's impossible. They checked the map. The signal was heading toward New Jersey. The first operative cursed. She found it. The second slammed his fist against the dashboard. We've lost her. Neither of them noticed Lena quietly slipping out through the opposite side of the station. For the first time that night, she was truly invisible. But the director wasn't finished. Inside the warehouse, another operative approached him nervously. Sir. The tracker failed. I know. We've lost the witness. The director calmly sipped his coffee. No. The operative looked confused. We planted too. He pressed a key. Another signal appeared on the screen. Hidden inside the zipper of Lena's backpack. The director smiled. She's smarter than expected. He looked toward the city map. But not smart enough. Lena hurried through empty streets, determined never to stop moving again. She reached a public library just before dawn. Although it was still closed, its outdoor benches provided a place to rest. Exhaustion overwhelmed her. Within minutes, she fell asleep. She never noticed the black SUV parking across the street. Inside sat 3 armed men wearing plain clothes. One of them lifted binoculars. Visual confirmation. Another loaded a silenced pistol. The third checked his watch. Wait for pedestrians to clear. At that exact moment, several blocks away, Richard Kingston's convoy sped through traffic. He had spent the entire night searching. His phone suddenly rang. Daniel's voice came through the speaker. We found surveillance footage. Richard gripped the phone. Where is she? Outside the Jefferson Public Library. Richard's driver accelerated. Step on it. The convoy raced through red lights under police escort. Back at the library, the armed men stepped out of their SUV. One crossed the street pretending to read a newspaper. Another carried a briefcase. The third kept his hands in his coat pockets. They looked like ordinary businessmen. Only their eyes revealed the truth. The leader spoke quietly into his earpiece. Target asleep. Proceed. He walked closer. 10 meters. 8. 5. He slowly reached into his coat. Inside, not a wallet, not a phone, a suppressed handgun. Lena remained asleep, completely unaware. The assassin raised the weapon, placed his finger on the trigger, and whispered, "Goodbye." The assassin's finger tightened on the trigger. The early morning streets were unusually quiet. A light breeze rustled the leaves of the trees outside Jefferson Public Library, and the first rays of sunlight painted the empty sidewalks in shades of gold. Lena remained asleep on the wooden bench, exhausted after the longest night of her life. She had no idea death was only a few feet away. The man in the grey coat took one final step forward. Hidden beneath the folded newspaper in his left hand was a suppressed pistol. To anyone passing by, he looked like an ordinary businessman waiting for the library to open. His earpiece crackled. Target confirmed. Execute. He slowly raised the weapon. Just as he prepared to fire. Screech. A convoy of black SUVs came flying around the corner at high speed. Tires screamed against the pavement as the lead vehicle stopped sideways between Lena and the assassin. Car doors burst open. Federal security. Drop your weapon. The assassin reacted instantly. Instead of firing at Lena, he spun toward the arriving guards and squeezed the trigger 3 times. Pop. 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 The suppressed shots shattered the morning silence. One bodyguard dove behind the SUV while another pulled Richard Kingston to safety. Pedestrians screamed and scattered in every direction. Lena woke with a start, confused by the chaos unfolding around her. What? Before she could finish, a bodyguard tackled her behind a concrete planter. Stay down. The assassin realized his opportunity was gone. He threw a smoke grenade onto the sidewalk. A thick cloud exploded across the street. Within seconds, all 3 attackers disappeared into the smoke. Seal every exit. Daniel Brooks shouted. But by the time the smoke cleared, The assassins had vanished into the morning traffic. Only an abandoned briefcase remained. Richard Kingston hurried toward Lena. "Are you hurt?" Still shaken, she slowly shook her head. "No." Richard looked directly into her eyes. "They came for you." Lena swallowed hard. "I told you they would." Daniel picked up the abandoned briefcase carefully. Inside were fake passports, burner phones, and detailed photographs. Every single photograph showed Lena. Sleeping, walking, leaving the police station, even sitting beneath the flower shop the previous morning. Richard's face darkened. "They've been watching you for days." Lena felt her knees weaken. "They knew where I slept." Daniel nodded grimly. "They know much more than that." A few hours later, Lena arrived at Kingston Manor under heavy security. The mansion looked like something from a movie. Towering gates, manicured gardens, fountains, and walls lined with priceless artwork. She stood silently in the grand entrance hall. "I've never seen a house this big." Richard smiled faintly. "It doesn't feel very big when you live here alone." Lena looked at him. "You have no family." "My wife passed away years ago." "I'm sorry." "My son." Richard paused. "He disappeared during a business trip 12 years ago. We never found him." Silence filled the room. For the first time, Lena saw something she had never expected from one of the world's richest men. Loneliness. Richard gestured toward the staircase. "You'll have your own room." "I don't need one." "You do now." "I can't stay here forever." "No," Richard replied. "But until we find the people hunting you, this is the safest place in the country." Meanwhile, several miles away, inside the abandoned warehouse, the director watched security footage from hidden cameras near the library. He replayed the failed assassination 3 times. Then he pressed pause. The screen froze on Richard Kingston shielding Lena with his own body. "Interesting." One operative entered cautiously. "Sir." "Speak." "Our team failed." "I noticed." "They're both inside Kingston Manor now." The director smiled. "Exactly where I wanted them." The operative looked confused. "You expected this." "I expected Richard Kingston to protect the girl." He walked toward a massive digital map displayed on the wall. "Now they are together." He pressed another button. A blueprint of Kingston Manor appeared. Every hallway, every security camera, every emergency exit. The operative stared in disbelief. "How did we get those plans?" The director answered calmly. "We built them." The room fell silent.